Welcome back to LonelyMan BGs, in this overview video for Scourge of the High Seas, published by Outland Entertainment and designed by Dustin Dade. Scourge of the High Seas is a game for 2 to 6 players, and playtime is up to 2 hours. In this buccaneering adventure game, players will take on the role of pirate captain, and do what pirates do. They will conduct their ships and their crews through turbulent waters, imbibe barrel after barrel of rum, which of course wasn't stolen, sell goods for gold, which of course weren't stolen, bury the not stolen treasure, and in general take arms against a sea of troubles. And whichever of these virtue-loving, honest, crew-having, generous, charitable, and considerate commanders has the most money at the end of the game wins. Scourge of the High Seas is played over the course of 5 rounds, and the game begins with each captain's boat stationed adjacent to the center island of the map. To move away from the center island and begin their fruitful adventures, players will assign crew members to spaces on their player boards, using screens to hide their action choices, then revealing once all players have chosen. Ships begin the game with 8 crew members ready to be placed in action spaces, and throughout the game, 2 more can be granted. A player's board is made up of various zones, places to store cargo and money, areas for exhausted crew and ready crew members, and movement and attack spaces. Depending on where at on the board the player wishes to move their ship, they will place a number of their crew in the movement spaces at the top of the player board. The more movement spots covered, the more movement a ship has. For example, placing 5 crew on movement allows the player to spend 7 movement. When spending movement, players will have to take into account the wind direction, which changes every round according to die roll. Going directly with the wind doubles the spaces moved with a single movement point, while going directly against the wind requires a player to spend double the movement. Players can also use their crew to attack islands, other ships, and merchants by placing a number of the crew on the attack spaces of their player board. In this example, the blue player moves his ship 2 spaces with the wind, costing him a single movement point. Now the player will initiate an attack on the island. In order to perform an attack, the player must be on the same space as the island or ship they are going to attack, and they must have at least 2 crew tokens assigned to the attack spaces. Combat is accomplished by the player placing at least 2 crew members into a draw bag. These can be taken from either attack spaces or ready crew members. Depending on what the player is attacking, a number of neutral crew are also placed into the draw bag. For example, islands, as well as merchant ships, always use 3 neutral crew as their defenders. Navy ships use 4 defenders, and bounty hunters use 5 defenders. Once the attacking and defending crew are placed in the draw bag, the pieces are shaken about, and then 3 tokens are randomly drawn from the bag. Whoever has the majority of these tokens pulled wins the conflict. If a player does not have the majority, they can choose to push their crew to fight harder by pulling additional tokens from the bag. In the example shown, the orange ship has decided to attack an island and places 5 crew in the bag against the 3 neutral crew of the island. The first 3 drawn has the orange player losing the conflict, so the player decides to push their crew members twice in a row and ends up pulling the majority, winning the conflict. But there is a downside to this sort of pressure, and any crew members pulled after the initial pull are placed in the exhausted space on the player board. The rest of the crew will go back to the ready space. Note that if a player decided earlier to pull crew from the ready space to attack, these are also exhausted once combat is complete. Neutral tokens are returned back to the main board. As players successfully attack islands and merchants, Navy ships are sent out to begin intercepting these rogue pirates. And once all Navy ships are out, the bounty hunter arrives on the scene. So what is it that these captains are after when on the hunt? After successful combat, captains will plunder some combination of gold, treasure cards, and supplies from the islands, which are replenished every round. Generally speaking, the more difficult a battle, the better reward a player will garner. For example, if the player is able to overcome the bounty hunter, they earn 5 gold coins and 2 treasure cards. While supplies are sold for gold, and amassing gold is the way to victory, treasure cards also have their uses, and players begin with 2 at the game's start. For example, Open Those Barrels allows a player to push 2 crew without exhausting them during combat. But players must try to balance their successes against other players. For as a player defeats islands and other ships, the bounty on their head grows, attracting the bounty hunter ship and its 5 crew members. At the same time, the bounty on a player's head goes towards their score at the end of the game. Besides attacking, players may also sell to the different market islands on the map. The sideboard presents to players the values of each cargo at these locations, but these values will change as the game goes on. As we'll see in a minute, everything aboard a player's ship is vulnerable to loss, whether that be from a Navy ship or another player. And so players are able to protect their gold by burying it at the center island, placing as much as they wish into their treasure chest. Once all players have taken their turns, the cleanup phase begins, starting with the moving of the non-player ships. Merchant ships move around the board in the direction of the arrows. Navy ships move in the same direction, but if they pass through a space with a player's ship, they stop, board the ship immediately, and take half of the cargo, as well as the entire bounty for that player. The bounty hunter is more direct, and moves 5 spaces towards the player with the highest bounty, taking treasure, gold, and supplies from those they pass through on the way. The game concludes at the end of the 5th round. The captain with the most gold is deemed winner. This includes gold in treasure chest, gold still on the ship, the value of any unused treasure cards, and the unclaimed bounty on a player's head. And that sums it up for Scourge of the High Seas. If you want to learn more about this game, please see the links below. Thanks for watching.